Ari build an Oireachtas Hailshi, Iama Uishla, a Coach. Excellencies, members of the Oireachtas, distinguished guests, awardees, and indeed those who have invited Sabine and I to be present. Is more an pleasure them of an or downtonacht, Ceandan a Hockot is more la roda lachanogas aragadish naherin. It is a pleasure to join you this evening in what has become, and I congratulate them for it, a prestigious event for Ireland's business and financial community. So may I begin by extending my sincere congratulations and my very best wishes to all of those who have been distinguished tonight for their contribution and who will be honoured later for really their contribution to Ireland's economic and social welfare. It is for me a great honour to receive the inaugural TK Whitaker Award, and it is an honour that I accept with an acute awareness of the extraordinary service the man whose name we celebrate tonight has rendered to the public good of this country. I am so pleased we are joined by members of his family. Thomas Kenneth Whitaker's 100th birthday last week has afforded a grateful Irish people an opportunity to reflect on the outstanding contribution he has made to so many aspects of Irish life, social, political, cultural, and ecological. I am delighted at this occasion then, and I with humility accept this award, but particularly I'm grateful for the occasion, the opportunity it gives me to publicly pay tribute to Dr. T.K. Whitaker, who has been described by our former Taoiseach as the most outstanding public servant of independent Ireland in the 20th century. His contributions and significant achievements sought to achieve an Ireland that would be a secure place for all its citizens, a land of peace, social and economic security, and cultural flourishing. And in outlining his vision, I think he put it better than I could put it. He put it best himself, with his characteristic cogency and humanity. He said, "Let us remember that we are not seeking economic progress for purely materialistic reasons, but because it makes possible relief of hardship and want, the establishment of a better social order, the raising of human dignity, and eventually the participation of all who are born in Ireland in the benefits, moral and cultural, as well as material, of spending their lives and bringing up their families in Ireland." Agus mín lam anmáine saoil TK Whitaker a cilúra nacht, saoil a caiise gobar chun rás sa muintir na héireann, saoil ab diausi sé trína gráth a gach caille rodéirnach, ar dianga, ar viliocht ar núra, ar nainacha, ar greachti is ar neachti. Tonight it is the fullness of TK Whitaker's life that I wish to pay special tribute to. A life spent in the service of the general welfare of all Irish citizens, and a life enhanced by a deep love of everything Irish. As I have said in that Irish language, our ancient language, our poetry, our nature and our rivers, our wounds and our feats. From his birth in the year of the Easter Rising 1916, the shift that he spearheaded, the policy moved from the protectionism and self-sufficient outlook of the young republic towards free trade and European integration, from years of violence in Northern Ireland right down to the Good Friday Agreement. The life of TK Whitaker is one that mirrors the journey of the modern Irish state on its road, a malach, to maturity. More than that, it is a life that is engaged with almost every crucial aspect of change in Ireland's 20th century history, and a life that offers, I believe, a wellspring of inspiration to all of us today. Indeed, all of us cannot but be inspired by the devotion to the public good, the unflinching integrity, the utmost intellectual rigor, the effectiveness, the constructive voluntarism, but also the deeply optimistic humanism and the unstinting generosity which have imbued all of Dr. Whitaker's endeavours on behalf of the Irish people. These qualities are the hallmark of his actions in the three fields that are most emblematic of his legacy to us. That is, social and economic reform, the peace process in Northern Ireland, and the sustenance of the Irish language. Ken Whitaker applied those very same skills of the mind and heart to all of his other undertakings in the public world, be it as Chancellor of the National University of Ireland, as Chairman of Comhairle Bhéiliad Snéireann, during his 2 terms as a public representative in Shanadern, or following the riots at Mountjoy Jail in 1984, when he chaired a wide-ranging inquiry into the Irish penal system. Even his all-consuming pastime, salmon fishing, was turned by Ken Whitaker into something enduring for us all. He who had formed an early interest in the King of Fish during his boyhood years in Drogheda, where he watched the Boyne fishermen in their ancient height-covered willow coracles shoot their nets and haul their catch onto the bank. He was instrumental many decades later in having the Salmon Research Centre in Newport incorporated into the new National Marine Institute, which provides valuable scientific advice for the conservation and regeneration of fish stocks. Indeed, Ken Whitaker shared all the great qualities of a generation of Irish civil servants who guided the young state through its difficult infancy. Their sense of collective purpose, awareness of one's public duty. These were men from which Dr. Whitaker learned his craft as a civil servant, and the enthusiastic younger colleagues with whom he worked in preparing his iconic report, Economic Development, published in 1958. They were all people animated by what Ken Whitaker described himself as a type of secular patriotism, a desire, as he put it, to be part of something that might bring about a better society. Another inspiring feature of Ken Whitaker's ethos is the integrity and fierce independence of thinking he brought to his work. He conceived of the role of the civil servant as one that should provide unbiased and, where necessary, even critical advice to the government. Ken Whitaker's commitment to his public duty was thus throughout his career remarkably devoid of subservience to power, political partisanship, or amenability to sectional interests. His advice was always rooted in rigorous and state-of-the-art research. Importantly, as Secretary of the Department of Finance from that long period, 1946 to 1969, he shepherded the transition between the stern economic orthodoxy of his elders to the more expansionary doctrine being promoted by a new generation of economists in the post-war years. He established a new division within his department's finance division that would produce much-needed economic and statistical data to inform real policy choices. This new section became, as it were, Dr. Whitaker's laboratory for the exploration of new innovative ideas for economic and social development. And all, of course, of this institutional change required an inclusive discourse. T.K. Whitaker's introduction of the notion of comprehensive economic planning to Ireland was at a time when many still rejected planification as a feature of communistic regimes, eager to provide sound empirical foundations to economic policy. Ken Whitaker did not just build up research capacity within the Department of Finance and the Central Bank. He was also instrumental in establishing a range of independent research bodies at arm's length from government, such as the Economic and Social Research Institute and the National Economic and Social Council, bodies that have played such an important role in making research available to the public and research available to the public service since the creation of these bodies in the 1960s. Ken Whitaker was never a dogmatic proponent of any single version of economics, something I welcome. As he put it, I kind of came into economics sideways. I hadn't heard of it much before I found it as a subject for the Assistant Inspector of Taxes examination. For 6 old pennies, I could buy Penguin editions of Harold Lasky, G.H. Cole, and other Fabian socialist thinkers. They made very interesting reading for a young man. His reflections and arguments were characterized by something that I like to call the necessary grace of discourse, and he had it in abundance. TK Whitaker's regard for reliable economic tools and data never collapsed into an arrogant expertise. From the start, economics appealed to him as being, as he said, more of an art than a science. And it was, in his eyes, an art whose primary function was to serve the general welfare of Irish people at a time when emigration, unemployment, and painfully low production output, including in the agricultural sector, were not just threatening social cohesion, but also undermining the very expectations and achievement of political independence itself. We have lessons to draw from that on the importance of social cohesion. It is interesting to note that Ken Whitaker has often imputed the sense of care and service that I've been referring to, that imbued his work as a finance man to the influence of his mother. A native of County Clare, Jane O'Connor had left her home in Clare to be trained as a Jubilee nurse in Manchester, subsequently securing an appointment in Rostrevor, County Down, where she met and married Edward Whitaker. Strong-minded, independent and committed, Jane did not simply instill a desire to do something of some social benefit in her son. She also fashioned Ken's own commitment to female equality, a principle implemented, for example, as governor of the central bank from 1969 to 1976. A similar sense of personal connection and involvement has imbued all of Ken Whitaker's efforts at fostering a peaceful solution to the cycle of violence that characterized Northern Ireland, particularly through the 1970s and 80s. Convinced as he was that the principle of free consent of all those living in Ireland was the necessary precondition for any policy of reunification, his voice was consistently one of reason, dialogue, and appeasement throughout an era of convulsed political emotions and sectarian conflict. The friendships and informal contacts Ken Whitaker had sustained with numerous public servants and policymakers in Northern Ireland and Britain became vital channels of communication throughout those difficult years. We today remain immensely grateful to Ken's commitment to the cause of peace on this island. Tá muid faoi comín na Ken as a humantas de cuimhnú agus de cahuán na teangan. Rud atá siúil aige feadh héal. Tá an grá Ken den teanga óna dúchas agus óna idechas luas scalaíochta. Óna pátracha agus na rin de fáistí a dála mo bhóthar le lína hóga gúnd an chlár. Agus ón sprága fuise ó bhúntar le thug se cuairt ggheartach a mí Loch Carlan. I will call marát bhréthe filia gaelia sémas dál makurta. In English, I translate and say, yes, we remain equal in the debt of Ken's lifelong commitment to the preservation and sustenance of the Irish language. Again, Ken Whitaker's passion for the Irish language goes back to his early home and school influences, to his mother's recollection of prayers and nursery rhymes from her County Clare childhood, and to the inspiring influence of a lay teacher, alongside whom he visited the nearby small Gaeltacht of Omeath and Carlingford Loch, famous as the birthplace of Gaelic poets such as Seamus Dowell MacCurta. Ken Whitaker's interest in the Irish language was further strengthened then by his attendance at an Irish summer school in the Donegal Gaeltacht for several consecutive years in the 1930s. Those visits to the Ranafest area opened up a whole new social and cultural horizon for the young Ken. It was a captivating world of Caelian songs, Pádracha agus Málachtaí, on cuid spúne de Theanga. That is, for those unfamiliar with the language, the prayers and curses which are the core of the language. Morning swims in the Powell Snov, and even dances with unchaperoned girls, which were part of the language acquisition. Ken's wife, Nora, shared his passion for the language, and Irish thus became the language of choice of their household. The couple's attachment to the language was deepened by their purchase of an abandoned schoolhouse in Glencullen, not far from Bangareras in North County Mayo, one of the lesser-known Gaelic areas to which Ken had first been introduced by the eminent folklorist and international scholar to whom we are all indebted, James Hamilton de Largy. Of course, Irish was not simply a private, but also a public passion for Ken Whitaker. It was a passion he shared generously with others by redefining the government's official language policy. In his capacity as Secretary to the Department of Finance in the 60s, leading by example, Ken used Irish whenever the opportunity arose, in departmental memos and reports, in official meetings and conversations, and even in published articles on complex monetary and economic matters. Ken Whitaker also encouraged Sean O'Toole and the poet Thomas Kinsella, who had worked with him in the Department of Finance, to collaborate on a compilation of a new anthology of poems in the Irish language with accompanying English translations. And when it was published in 1981, spanning as it did a period from the fall of the old Gaelic culture in the early 17th century to the emergence of English as the dominant vernacular of the 19th century, Undúnara, Poems of the Dispossessed, was dedicated by its editors to T.K. Whitaker. It remains today an enduring example of that ethos that guided Ken Whitaker's efforts to make Irish language and culture accessible to all, English and Irish speakers alike. He saw the trap that constituted the tyranny of what I call binary constructs. It must not be a choice of English or Irish, of science or culture, of economics or ethics. His life is one of making connections, of achieving the necessary symmetry of being in living ethically. All of us can surely be inspired then by the profoundly humanistic vision Ken Whitaker had for the Irish language and everything else in which he expressed an interest. It was a vision to which he gave a compelling articulation when he said as chairman of Board na Gaeilge in the 1970s that our commitment to a bilingual Ireland should be based on a recognition that the Irish language is the most precious heritage, the thing that most signifies and maintains our continuity as a distinctive people, the key to a treasure trove of poetry and prose epics, folklore and song, which has expressed the imagination and feeling, the wisdom and humour, all the varied responses of generations of Irish people, and its vicissitudes from the early centuries down indeed to our own day. And in saying that, he was expressing a respect for all cultures and the joy of learning and speaking all languages and respecting all memory. A cóide Gaelis mín le mar áris, comóras atán, as an dúsio ó, agus muide comóra ciad flinoari amach na cosca. As o bres scarnas da servisi generin, Sheshin Thomas Kenneth Whitaker. Is fúnear fáte glácalis an dúchlan, sail hoisialta, sail cultúr ag sail acnamuach, muinta na héirí na hútraig. Anas go meg ar saránig ar fad, in an leas a wintas ar sirsha politiúr. Dear friends, may I say once again, how honored I feel to be receiving this inaugural T.K. Whitaker Award. On this year, when we are celebrating both the centenary of the Easter Rising and the 100th anniversary of Ireland's most outstanding civil servant, Thomas Kenneth Whitaker. His life, his writing and his work challenges all of us to continue the task of advancing the social, cultural and economic flourishing of all of Ireland's citizens as the true measure of our political freedom. And it is a great privilege to accept this award and to be here this evening with those who are committing themselves to advancing such a vision. Thank you.